the same person who rented the hotel for her. The man confirmed that this was not the first time Lin gave lavish gifts to the lady. Jian thought that if her sister married this master, they would never have problems again, so she asked if they could meet him. Meanwhile, the protagonist observed the situation from his bedroom window and thought that his wife's younger sister really had a short memory. Soon Wang explained to the girl that the Lord had many important things to do now, and he had no time for guests. King looked carefully at the blonde and reminded her that she should not interfere in Xine's affairs. Jiang felt the seriousness of King's words and trembled with fear. Then, after slightly annoyed, she replied to King that her sister would not let go of her husband. The organizer soon replied that his work was done and bowed before Xine. King reminded him that his duties were done and he should go. Suddenly, the old man approached his granddaughters and tried to find out who this master was who was at Xine's birthday party. Cousin Yan quickly took the girl's note and asked ironically what method she used to conquer this guy. Yan believed that only she was worthy of going to the celebration, but Xin didn't want to give up her seat because she really wanted to check if this master was her husband. But the grandfather stressed out, saying that Xin insisted on putting her husband and daughter above her family. He really wanted Xin to abandon the protagonist and focus on making them rich. Moreover, the old man believed that Lin had become a burden to his family, so Xin allowed the invitation to be withdrawn as long as his family was not affected. Yan was happy because he believed that Xin was not worthy of an invitation. At this moment, the protagonist and King watched this scene. Lin's servant really wanted to come back and teach them a lesson, but the hero forbade her to do so and promised that in the future he would make them regret their existence. At that moment, King's phone rang. The school principal says that Ray had been sent to the hospital. Lin heard that her daughter had lost consciousness and ordered Qing to start the car immediately. Then, after a few minutes, they arrived at Binhai Central Hospital, where they brought Ray unconsciously. The doctor carefully examined the test results. Qing and Lin entered the room, asking how the girl was feeling. The doctor replied that he ruled out other options and found that the girl had a relapse of an old disease. Lin sat on the bed and asked if it would be possible to transplant bone marrow to save her again. But the doctor decided that first they should invite Dr. Li to come see Ray. The protagonist was very surprised that Dr. Li was in town. The doctor replied that Li came back as soon as he heard the rumor about the master's awakening and is now in the hospital. Lin immediately sent her servant to find the doctor and ordered him to go brought quickly. At this moment, the doctor decided to ask if the protagonist knew the severity of Ray's illness. Lin replies that he was seriously injured at that time and did not fully understand his daughter's condition. The doctor says that it turns out that 2 years ago Ray awakened the imperial and royal lineage at the same time. So that's why he fell into a coma. The protagonist was scared and couldn't believe his ears, but Dr. Li appeared in the room and assured him that the big man had nothing to worry about because he had come to help the princess. The old man was so happy to see Lin again, so much so that tears appeared in his eyes. This reaction made the men in the room feel uncomfortable and they looked at each other in silence. The god of war decided to return to the main conversation because he was worried about blood fusion in his daughter. Normally, no royal and imperial bloodline would appear in the same person, but Dr. Li says that nowadays there are only 3 people who have both bloodlines. The protagonist knew that he had both, and there was also another boy in the capital. But he wondered who was the third person he had never heard of before. Li waited for a dramatic pause, and then with a burst of energy revealed that the third person is Ray. Then the doctor's aura flew around her. The protagonist didn't like it said, and shouted Qing's name. The girl imperceptibly moved behind the old man. Qing held his palm next to his neck, and asked the master to explain himself more clearly before touching the girl. Li says that Lin's royal bloodline was personally forbidden years ago, and shouldn't have affected his daughter, then asked if the god of war wanted to know why this was happening. Lin was unsure where the imperial bloodline came from, and allowed Qing to let the doctor go. The old man promised that if the girl was by his side, no one would recognize her as a descendant of the imperial bloodline. Lin really expected that, and decided to trust Dr. Li for now. King remembered that the school also had to notify Xin and she would soon be here. The protagonist realized it was time to leave and told Li that he would know what to explain to Insin. Soon after, the protagonist's wife ran through the hospital corridors as fast as she could. She was very nervous and didn't even pay attention to Sun. The guy wanted to know what she was doing here, but the friend got mad because he didn't want any trouble. Sun received a slight blow to his friend's head and admitted that this time he had nothing to do with it. He guessed that the girl was worried about the child. Liu didn't understand why they needed this information, and then Sun explained that Xin would definitely need money for the treatment. Liu knew the poor state the Jian's family was in and prepared to use his chance to make the blonde beg for him. At that moment, Ixin burst into the room and asked worriedly what happened to her daughter. Li asked the woman to be quiet so as not to wake up the little princess. The girl did not expect to see a second doctor besides Shen, so she asked who he was. Dr. Chen introduced his mentor and promised that Ray was safe. Then he snapped his fingers and Ray began to turn around in his bed again. Lee said that the girl would soon wake up thanks to acupuncture. Suddenly Ray opened his eyes and tried to find his father in the room. Because he was sure he heard his voice, the mother appeared next to her saying that she fainted at school. So she was lucky enough to meet this doctor who uses traditional Chinese medicine. Ray recognized the man as a brilliant doctor. The old man couldn't contain his feelings and said that the baby was very kind to him. The man leaned over to the girl and started hugging her. Sin was worried that she wouldn't be able to pay for the doctor's appointment because her family wouldn't give her a dime. The man noticed her concerns and said that he would not receive payment from her, since he came in the name of Mr. Lin. At that time, Ray realized that he wasn't imagining things and actually heard his father's voice. Shin quickly asked if the doctor could tell him who this Mr. Lin was and why he is always helping her. Lee couldn't tell the secret, so he just said that Lin is the supreme lord of the southern border and she will find out the details when it's time. Then the doctor returned the girl to bed and handed her mother a business card, ordering her to call if necessary. Now that Ray woke up, the man was convinced that she was okay, so he could say goodbye and leave the infirmary. The girl called her mother and confessed that Dr. Lee was invited by her father, and she heard his voice while she slept. Although Sin normally didn't believe her daughter's words, she decided to agree, because she wanted the great Lord Lin to really be her husband, even because she had never met this unknown man, and Lin's personality would explain a lot. What really bothered her about this theory was the fact that the protagonist didn't directly tell her that he had woken up. Ray noticed that her mother was thinking about something, and these thoughts bothered her a lot. But the woman pretended that nothing bothered her. She winked at her daughter and said that they would go home. Suddenly, Dr. Chen intervened, saying that the little princess should remain under observation for a few more days. Xin was worried about the possibility of having to leave Ray alone in the hospital, but her daughter seemed inspired and promised her mother that she could have some alone time. After that, the girl remained in the hospital and waited for her recovery. Meanwhile, the protagonist was still in the hospital and asked his subordinate if she had found information about the head of the Jian's family. King wasted no time and managed to find something strange in a short period of time. The girl reported that everyone in the family was ordinary people, but Shin's father had something different. The protagonist recalled that he met his wife's father only once and soon after he ended up passing away. The subordinate confirmed the information and said that she discovered rumors that believed he was not the heir. Lin became interested in this information and realized that if this was true, then the status of his wife's father is in question. Lee said that with the help of his position in society, he was able to discover that the emperor had light-haired heirs. This fact could mean that Axin's father was a descendant of the emperor, but it was impossible to know for sure. The old man admitted that he wanted to accept the princess as a disciple. Lin allowed the man to teach the girl how to control her abilities and asked him what else he needed. So Lee asked Lin to allow him to enter the Binhai celebration. He really wanted to see Lin return. Meanwhile, Xin had no choice and had to leave her daughter at the hospital, so she asked the girl to listen to Dr. Chen. Ixin promised Ray that she would definitely come after work. The mother assured her that everything would be fine and then said goodbye. Suddenly, Chen receives a call from her cousin. The protagonist's wife didn't understand what more she could want if she already took the invitation. Yan ordered the girl to go to the company now. After half an hour, Xin went to the office. When he approached the finance department, he heard loud screams. Yan was inside with a cup of coffee and shouted furiously at the employees, asking what they were doing there. Xin didn't want to see his cousin, but she needed to find out why they were looking for her. The girl turned to Shin and was surprised that she was asking such stupid questions. Yan said that Ixin was a financial manager and was away from work with the company in crisis. Then she threw coffee at Sin, but the woman managed to dodge and remembered that she had asked for time off today. Yan didn't believe it and promised to deduct half a month's salary and added that next time she will throw it away. Shin tried to argue, but it was no use, because the girl believed that her company was in crisis because of people like Shin. The blonde did not consider that the crisis was on her shoulders and remembered that all accounts go through Yan. The cousin realized the accusation and ordered the company to get out of the crisis in 3 days or Sin would be fired. The time was extremely short and Sin thought that Yan was joking, but that was not the case. The cousin repeated that she would fire her if she failed. Yan was pleased with herself and believed that Shin would never deal with it. Meanwhile, Sun was sitting in the office and said that just like Liu Yu, he was also tired of waiting. But he added that Yan promised that there would be no problems with Sin this time. Liu was already anxious to know how he would gain an advantage over the girl. Sun smiled happily and was confident that this time they would succeed, but the friend couldn't relax because he remembered that this wasn't their first plan. Sun replied that he had plan B if the first one went wrong. Then Sun questioned Yan's words, which made the cousin worried, and she replied that she wouldn't tell anyone anything. Yan winked, and the men thought that the genetics of the Jian's family were not fair to her. Liu wanted to know from his friend what his plan was because he wanted to be prepared for anything. Sun said that in Shin's life there are two people important to her and a very small Ray, and the other is her husband Lin. Meanwhile, the protagonist went to his daughter's room and asked if the girl would accept to become a disciple of Dr. Lee. Ray asked if the man would teach her how to heal people. The god of war looked at his daughter with adoration and wanted to say what Lee would teach, but he didn't have time because Ching appeared behind him and reported Xin's problems in the company. The Jian's family was planning to confiscate the house to pay for the losses. Lin asked if anyone was behind it. The subordinate reported that several people saw Liu and Sun in the finance department. Ray was afraid for the mother, but the father convinced her that he would take care of the problems himself and that the daughter should recover. King waited for her master's orders and asked if she should bring these too. The protagonist decided that they would deal with them when the time came, but for now they would take care of Xin. Meanwhile, the wife of the god of war sat in her office for hours and couldn't think of a way out of this situation. It turns out that all the partners of the company withdrew their investments, and even the bank refused a loan. The girl was very worried because there was only one day left to solve the problem. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of doors opening, and someone entered Shin's office without knocking. This person was Sun, and he was following his plan by going to the girl at a difficult time for her. The guy behaved relaxed and told the girl that he had come to help her nobly. Xin got up from the table and didn't plan to accept Sun's help. Then she asked him to leave. The man pressured the girl, reminding her that her family was homeless. But even that didn't convince her. The guy said that he always helps others, then said that he wouldn't bother her anymore and walked to the exit. At that moment, he said that if she wanted his help, she should go to the hotel by 9 in the morning. Xin was angry at this behavior and shouted that she would never make a deal with such an unscrupulous person. The boy didn't argue. He just said that he would wait for her tomorrow at the scheduled place. The protagonist's wife noticed that this situation was set up by her cousin and son. At that moment, we see Xin's mother going through a stack of papers. She asked why the company's things were sent to their house. The daughter had no choice and said that Yan would confiscate her house. The woman was furious with the news because problems were constantly falling on her family, but she believed that her daughter would ask that guy named Lin to help them, and that would not be a problem for her. But the protagonist's wife replied that she never even saw this man. Li always began to blame her daughter for all the problems of the family. Xin did not want to disappoint her loved ones, and since the Wang family did not respond to her letter, the girl would have to ask Sun for help. The day of the meeting arrived and the time of the scheduled meeting was approaching. The protagonist's wife arrived at the hotel and saw the right room. She entered and immediately shouted to Sun that she had come, but the man near the window was not Sun. The girl was looking at her feet and didn't notice it. Suddenly, Wang walked away from the window and greeted the girl kindly. Xin saw Wang and concluded that the guy was conspiring with the Sun family to destroy their company. The man approached the blonde and explained that it was a misunderstanding. He said he just doesn't have time and handed him a check. Wang added that Mr. Lin would take care of everything and change the Sun card number with a trick. That's why he was the one who was in this room. Xin was very happy and was sincerely grateful to the person who saved her in this situation. Wang left the room, leaving the girl inside. Then he instantly became serious. He met with the protagonist and reported that his wife's problem had been solved. Now Lin was going to punish the offender. Meanwhile, Liu was sitting in another room. The guy was angry because Xin hadn't come to him yet. He admitted that the girl was hard to break. Liu's phone rang and Yan appeared on the screen, saying that he knew he could kidnap anyone. Suddenly, the guy hears a knock on the door and ran to answer, thinking it was Xin. However, at the door, he saw a completely different girl from what he expected to see. Ching was there and kicked the man in the face very hard. Liu flew back and hit the table, knocking over the dishes. The girl broke the guy's lip with the blow. Liu didn't understand why that strange girl pestered him and constantly appeared next to him. Ching didn't answer him and went back to the corridor, calling Lin. Liu looked at the newcomer and was surprised because the guy looked very familiar to him. The protagonist introduced himself as a soldier who served in the army for many years and became known as the supreme leader of the South. Liu felt his body trembling with fear and he wondered why the guy was helping Xin. Lin explained that she was his wife and pushed the guy to the ground. Liu didn't believe that a disabled person could come to be the leader of the South. At that moment,